Alright, so today we're playing Corrupted Dungeons with this insane Daybreaker build. And as you can see, we're using a leather jacket, Cultist Cowl, soldier boots, and then we have a taproot in the offhand. However, later on we are going to be switching to a slightly different build. We're going to swap for a torch in the offhand for more brawling potential. And we're going to be using a Gigantify potion. Since right now we are using a Heretic Cape and a Smuggler Cape, and that allows us to use 2 healing potions almost back to back with like 20 seconds cooldown between them. But I find that usually these Corrupted Dungeons fights don't actually last that long for me to be able to use both of them. At least at the Stalker level, where everybody is going for very all-in builds. So we instead are going to be swapping for the Avalonian Cape, which gives us even more brawling potential and survivability. And then we're going to be using Gigantify potions, which counter a lot of these all-in builds. So let's get started with the first fight. And right here we are fighting against this Brimstone Staff, and usually against Fire Staffs I like going on Deflecting Spin. However, this time I'm just going to stay on Impaler, and we're gonna get some poke damage from range. As you see, he puts his firewall down way prematurely, and that just allows me to walk away, and as he uses his E on me, it just takes me out of range of his Q. So then that means he misses his Q, and then I am able to go back in, and then I am able to bypass his firewall by just running into it once, and then Daybreaker through it, purging his Cleric Robe, and then we win the fight. So that's that. In the next encounter, we are fighting against a pair of Avalonian Gloves, which are very good in this content, and this player is also very good. We had an engagement previously where I actually won it by using my Daybreaker E through his E. Since the Daybreaker E gives you CC immunity, that means if he lands the E on me right as I'm casting it, I do not get knocked up. So that means usually the Daybreaker is going to be able to dodge the follow-up of the E by that, and that gives you a huge advantage. So what I had to do is I had to switch to Harpoon, and I had to chase him across the entire Corrupted Dungeon, and he already broke 2 crystals, so that means he would just be able to skip the fight if I let him run away. So I have to take the risk and get myself low to try to bait him into the fight, and that's exactly what I do. And here you can see me waiting to use my E, and as soon as he's going to jump on me with his E, I'm going to E through him. So watch this, and we E right as the E lands, and that gives us immunity and enough damage to be able to win the fight. So sometimes you have to bait in enemy players, or they will just skip the fight. Next up, we are going to brawl against a Quarterstaff, and we allow him to open the engagement with his E. We are going to use our jacket right into it, and I'm a bit premature here with my E because I do not actually purge his mercenary jacket, so he gets a lot of value from it. And this fight is pretty close. I stick on him and we brawl it out, and using my Cultist Cowl, which is very good in brawling situations, I am able to just barely win the fight. And look at this, the loot that we get here is absolutely insane. We are extremely lucky, and we get a 7.4 Guardian Armor, so that's amazing loot we get from this fight. We are not going to be counting it towards the final loot, but needless to say, I was very happy with that. And in the next encounter, we are fighting against a one-handed Holy Staff. Now, healing builds get debuffed in Corrupted Dungeons, however, this build has so much self-heal and so low cooldowns that it can brawl incredibly effectively. So my game plan here is to try to stick on him constantly. I have to basically out-damage his healing, otherwise I will just die. And I made a mistake there because I attacked right into his purging Mage Robe, and after that it's just a non-stop brawl, and I have to use my Qs and my Ws on cooldown to be able to deal as much DPS as I can. And you see just how much healing he has. I basically already took his life down 2 times by this point, but in the end I am able to purge his helmet, defensive ability, and that deals enough damage for me to be able to close out the kill. Otherwise I was very close to losing the fight there if he got one more heal off. And in this next one we are fighting against a one-handed Arcane Staff with a mercenary jacket, so we are going to try to save our E for his mercenary jacket and just watch out for his E, which does both a purge and a silence. So we're going to try to maximize the value of our equipment without getting purged or silenced. And right as we begin the fight, I get a reconnecting, and I still hit my W, so that allows me to jump in with the E, and his silence doesn't purge anything, so this allows me to now get value with my jacket. And I keep chasing him down with my W. After I use my Cultist Cowl, it was basically a waste because he was just running away from me. So I take the time to now step away and give time for my healing potion to come back up, and also all of my cooldowns up for the next engagement. And here he smartly uses his silence on his E to prevent me from Eing his mercenary jacket, so he gets full value from his jacket right there, and then he kites out my Inferno jacket. Then we keep brawling, and he does a lot of hits into my Cultist Cowl, so he takes a lot of damage from that, and in the end we are able to win the fight, and we don't even have to use our second healing potion. And next up we are going against another brawling Quarterstaff, and again our setup is very good for fighting against this build, but he lands his EW combo, and at this point he probably should just run away to try to reset his cooldowns because he got a good start. But he decides to just blink and go in for the fight, which I use my Cultist Cowl immediately as he jumps on me, and that means he takes a lot of damage or he just cannot do anything for 4 seconds. And since he attacks into me that many times, he just takes way too much damage, and it's easy for me to win the brawl in the end. And next up we are fighting against another healing build, which is a Nature Staff this time. The Nature Staff has a ton of brawling potential and healing, so we have to be very careful, but there's not really an option for us to fight him at a distance, so we are going to have to brawl him and just use our abilities correctly. So I miss my W, and then he decides to use his boots to sprint on me to begin the fight, which I think is a mistake. I use my boots to dodge his W, and then I immediately purge his cloth frost armor, which gives us a lot of advantage in this brawl. But you see just how much damage I'm taking by staying in his Qs and hitting his Ws. But in the end, our damage is just enough to win the fight, but it was a very close one, so this is a very potent build against us if we do not use our abilities correctly. The key there was basically purging his frost armor. And in this next encounter we are against the one-shot Brawler Gloves, which, since we have a lot of HP, is not that much of a threat to us. So we go in with our E, and then we immediately Inferno Jacket, which means we block a lot of damage. You see, even through Inferno Jacket we take half of our HP. And then we use the Cultist Cowl as soon as he's ready to use his second rotation, which means he takes a lot of damage. But since we have a healing potion and we're using a taproot, both of his combos, especially since he hit it through the Inferno Jacket, are not enough to kill us, and then he's basically just a sitting duck, and we are able to take him out. Next up, it's almost a mirror matchup. This Daybreaker is using a Cleric Robe instead of a Leather Jacket, so let's see how this goes. He begins the fight by Eing immediately towards me, and then I am able to get value from my Impaler because he is not able to reflect the damage from it. Now, when there's a Spear versus Spear matchup, if the W is mismatched, so Impaler versus Reflect, the Reflect wins if it can successfully reflect the Impaler damage, otherwise the Impaler is going to get more value. And yeah, that's how the brawl went down, and because I was able to hit my Impalers while he was not reflecting, I have enough damage to win that. Next up we are fighting against another Avalonian Gloves, and this time you see we are playing very bad because he is able to hit his E and I'm not able to dodge it using my E, so he gets just a ton of damage. And then he can heal up, he can use Gigantify Potion to nullify my brawling, and I do not have enough damage to be able to win this. I use my E, but it's way too late, and I actually E straight into a trap. So that is our first loss on the Daybreaker build. But we have to move forward. Sometimes you take those and you just go on. Next up, we are very greedy and we use our E to begin an engagement against this bow. And we are at a disadvantage straight away because of that. I was trying to catch him down because he was breaking crystals, but usually people do that to bait you in. So we use our Cultist Cowl to deal damage to him while he's auto-attacking us. And we're also on Harpoon, so that gives us less brawling potential, but in the end it's enough. If we stick on the bow, it's still enough for us to win the fight. And the next fight is actually a more even fight, and this time we are on deflecting spin, which allows us to just stick close to the bow, and every time he decides to throw an attack into our deflecting spin, we just gain advantage in the brawl. But here he jukes my E by sprinting one way and then sprinting the other as soon as I cast my E, so that was a good play on his part, wasting our E, but it's still enough for us to brawl using our Inferno Jacket and our deflecting spin. You see just how much damage he took there from using his Q into my deflecting spin. And we almost have our Cultist Cowl off cooldown, so just a ton of brawling potential on this Daybreaker build. If he does not kite a bit, there's not much chance for him to win that fight. And next up, we are going to be fighting against an incredibly interesting build. So I really love this guy's build. He's using the pole hammer, which was just buffed recently. So he has a very long distance stun that we are going to have to play around. So you see right away he begins the fight by Eing, and the stun just lasts so long that he can get his entire W. He Cultist Cowls me, so I have to be careful not to use too many abilities, but he gets a lot of value from that because I use like 4 of my abilities. And I haven't used, so only now I use my Inferno Jacket, but he uses a Poison Potion, which deals true damage, and we almost lose the fight. We just barely hang on to life. And at this point we are still using the double healing potion, so I have to kite and buy time for me to be able to use my second healing potion. And as I run into a dead end, I just get it up. I am able to predict his assassin shoes and I E through them, otherwise he would be able to just kill me using the stun. And right now he has no long range abilities, so I'm able to walk into range, use my Q to secure the fight. But this was a very close one, so good fight on his end. And next up we run into this meta Trinity Spear build, and I'm just gonna be honest, he breaks my ankles here. So right as I use my first engagement, he deflecting spins it, and he uses his E, then runs away, baiting my Inferno Jacket. And he's using his deflecting spin and his Hunter Hood Reflect to just nullify a lot of my damage, and he predicts my W right here. So first off, I trigger his Cleric Robe, I do not purge anything, he predicts my W, so his reflex there was incredibly good. And as I mentioned previously, in Spear versus Spear, if someone is using deflecting spin, it is going to win if he uses it correctly to reflect the damage of the Impaler. So well played to that Trinity Spear, and that was a great fight for me to learn how to play against it for next time. In the next one we get a more familiar brawling Quarterstaff build, but again he doesn't use his abilities that well. We begin the fight by dodging his E. We also miss a lot of our abilities right there, so our Impaler, but we already have an advantage from the beginning of the fight that was enough for us to win. And you can see at this point we also switched to using Gigantify Potion and an Avalonian Cape, which allows us to brawl even more effectively. And we're lucky and we get a 7-2 Quarterstaff, which is worth almost 2 million silver, so I'm gonna be honest, I was very lucky this entire session with the loot we have gotten. And here we fight against a one-handed spear, so he's using the taproot, so he has a lot of brawling potential, and he baits me. He was already low on HP, so that was very dangerous for him, but he baits me into so many mobs and traps that he can basically equalize the HP difference. And at this point, as he drops the aggro of the mobs, I lure 3 wolves on me and one of those demons that just nibble on my HP, and I almost die to the mobs. You can see him on the southwest of my screen, he's chasing me down. So now I have to figure out an escape path, and I use my healing boots, otherwise I would probably be taken down by the monsters. So I finally managed to drop combat, which means I am able to heal, but as I run into the corner of the map and run into the boss, I run right on the edge of the arena here. I can drop all aggro and I can wait for him to walk forward. So if he decides to walk forward into the arena, which he does, he is going to get the aggro of the boss. So he's starting to take damage, and now since he probably used his sprint to chase me down, I am able to use my sprint to chase him down instead. And then I can just hit my E from max range, which allows me to take him down. But this was a very close fight, so this was a very messy corrupted dungeon fight, and I think these are way more interesting than the ones that you fight in the middle of the arena. So good fight to him, and we managed to take this one home. In the next one, we're against a full rush Claymore build, so he's just gonna Assassin Shoes on top of us, and then we're just gonna begin brawling. Again, we use our Cultist Cowl, and you see just how much damage he takes from us using that. And the one thing we're watching for here is his stacks. So right now he's on 2 stacks. As soon as he hits 3 stacks, I'm going to purge them. And you see he E'd immediately after he got the 3 stacks, but since I was able to purge them instantly, he got absolutely no value off of that. Next up, we're fighting against a Fire Staff that's using Artillery Barrage, and as he begins casting, I use my Deflecting Spin way too early, so he has already gotten so much value here. I tried to use my Inferno Jacket to get more value, but he purchased it using his Mage Robe, so I'm just playing very terribly in this engagement. I tried to use my Sprint to heal enough to win the fight, but as he uses his second Artillery Barrage, I have nothing to be able to counter that, and he still has his Resilient Cape, so GG to that, he manages to win the fight. So after more than 10 fights, we are able to show our loot tabs, and you saw over there we have a lot of black market loot worth almost 7 million silver, and in the stackables, if we ignore all the resources and stuff I had from before, we just got 1 million in raw silver and probably like 500k in other stackables. If you enjoyed this Corrupted Dungeon video, then make sure to leave a comment, and what other build would you like to see next?